Lots of women tell me that their menopausal years were a real catalyst in them taking back the reins of their own boundaries and saying what they mean more, and caring less about what other people think. A bit of a coming of age, if you like. And there's something else that they tell me is really common as well for them to feel, and it's less motivated. Often that term motivation is used around exercise, but feeling less motivated at menopause it's not restricted to just exercise. Sometimes it's just feeling less motivated to do the kind of things that used to bring you joy and pleasure, hobbies and things that you do in your time off. And yes, there is a reason for it. It's those hormonal changes again. There was even a study done on this to show there was a link between lowered ovarian function, i.e. menopause, and a reduced message in the brain to say during exercise, this is a great thing, I'm really enjoying it, there's lots of benefits to this and I want to do more of it. So yeah, thanks Mother Nature. I'll put the link to that study in the notes below if you want to have a look at that. I'm not going to blame menopause entirely for this, and I'm not going to blame anybody actually. And neither am I going to say, well, that's how it is, we've just got to get used to this, and less motivated is how I'm going to be about my life. Because I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for any of my clients. I don't think any woman should have to put up with that. And of course, the other thing is when we're talking about exercise, there is tons of evidence to show there are loads of benefits for us as menopausal women to be engaged in regular exercise and activity of varying sorts that help us with our cardiovascular health, bone health, brain health, mental health, emotional well-being, let alone weight, the one thing that most people think of when I start talking about motivation to exercise. So exercise and moving our body in various ways is crucial for managing our changing health needs as we get older, and it's really going to help us with that. And at the same time, we're going through this hormonal flurry of activity and change that means we are predisposed, for some of us anyway, not all of us, for some of us to feel a bit less motivated to actually do it. But like I said before, I don't think it's just about the hormones. I think it's easy to blame them. I think there's other stuff going on as well, because speaking from experience, from talking to clients, coaching clients, and also as a woman myself in my 40s, I know that motivation is not the bottom layer. There's stuff underneath that as well, especially when it comes to our changing bodies and how we think of ourselves around that. There's a lot to be explored that can be explored and input around this whole motivation issue. For example, what about pelvic floor health? Because if that's an area, and it commonly is an area that women struggle with, then of course you're not going to feel motivated to finally start that couch to 5k until the pelvic floor stuff's sorted, which it can be. You would need to speak to my friend Elaine Miller about that, and I'll put her contact details below and where you can find her videos and get her help. But my point is, it's not really about motivation there, is it? It's around a deeper subject than that. And of course, again, if you're struggling to concentrate at work because you've got brain fog, or because you've been awake since 4 a.m. because you can't sleep, or there's hot flushes at night and hot sweats, so your sleep's disrupted and you're exhausted during the day, you're not going to be particularly motivated to get up at 6 a.m. and start lifting weights or getting on the exercise bike as soon as you come in from work. You just want to go to sleep and get that energy back, not start using it up. And another common thing is that this time of life, in our midlife, our bodies are changing, our whole insides are changing, inside and out. And coming to terms with that can be a bit tricky, and find that a lot of women try to go back to previous lifestyle habits where they felt they had a greater sense of self-security, self-assurance, confidence, and that involved not only being younger, but keeping up with sometimes pretty grueling exercise regimes or dietary habits. And that's difficult to keep going when you've got all these internal shifts going on and it just doesn't fit who you are now. I'm saying you can let that go. It doesn't have to be about trying to repeat what you did in the past. Progress is about moving forward, not trying to go back. And of course, midlife can be a time of reckoning a little bit with relationships, least of all with yourself. But I'm really thinking about long-term partners and marriages and families and shifting roles within families, and also with friends and colleagues at work. All of that can shift, and it can get quite stressful when it is doing that. So of course it's going to affect how you feel about yourself, confidence, and also the time and the mind space to be thinking about other things to be able to take care of yourself properly. And quite often exercise comes way down the list, and so the motivation to do it feels more like guilt rather than motivation to want to do it. So with all this going on, what are we actually going to do about it? How can I encourage you right now to feel a little bit more motivated? Well, first off, we know that there are changes that affect most of us around how the brain receives reinforcing messages like reward and pleasure. And I'm specifically talking about exercise when I'm talking about this. So the things that used to give you a bit of an endorphin hit around exercise in the past might not give you that same hit and buzz now. It might not lead to those same feelings. However, the bit to take note of is it doesn't mean you can't access those endorphins, those pleasure centers in the brain around moving and exercise. It doesn't mean to say that you don't have motivation. Perhaps you're just looking in the wrong place. Maybe it's a different type of exercise that you could do with trying, or do it in a different way, like a different venue or with a group of friends rather than doing it on your own. And that's my second little tip, really, that doing these things in a group, particularly women together, we can be really harsh on ourselves when it's just your own mind going through these thoughts. And if we allow ourselves the space to even think these things about ourselves, it can be we can grind ourselves down with it. But women together in a group, we can be really encouraging for each other. And when you've got, I hate to say it, when you've got that accountability that you're going to meet someone somewhere to do an exercise class or do some kind of exercise together, you're less willing to let them down, and it becomes more of a social promise rather than all about the exercise. And the third thing that I wanted to say and remind you, because you probably know this already, but motivation is generated in the doing of the activity. It doesn't come before, it comes during. You're only going to feel motivated once you begin. So if we're waiting for that motivation to arrive before we even get started, then we could well be waiting for a long time, and then that gives us time to talk ourselves out of it and have all those self-critical conversations which you and I are so good at it. But here's the thing, if you're still waiting to do it, if you're still waiting for motivation to arrive, chances are you've set yourself too big a target. Perhaps you're trying to run before you can walk. I mean that in every sense of the word. Maybe you don't need to be as advanced as you think you do to go to a yoga class. Maybe you don't need to get all the gear to walk into the gym that you haven't been in for 5 or 6 years. Maybe you just need to start in a really, really small way. If you're struggling to find the motivation to exercise, or maybe it's time or energy that's really stopping you, or even low motivation around something else, perhaps something in your personal life, then we've always got the Facebook community, a really safe place to be able to discuss all this, where I can hear your stories and hear your struggles, but also give plenty of advice and guidance around it. And that's in Menopause Done Naturally.